When I lost my job, I thought the hardest part would be facing my boss. I was wrong. The hardest part was walking through my own front door. I still remember that evening, the silence of the house, the smell of her coffee, the TV humming in the background. I told Alina what had happened, expecting at least a sigh, a touch, maybe a quiet, "It's okay." But she looked at me and laughed. Not a nervous laugh. Not the kind that hides worry. A real, sharp, cruel laugh, like she'd been waiting for this moment. "Fired? You?" she said, tilting her head with a smirk. Guess karma finally caught up. That sentence broke something inside me. I didn't say a word. I just stood there, holding the envelope that had ended my career, and listened to the woman I loved mock me like a stranger. I wanted to explain, tell her the company was downsizing, that even my manager had been laid off, but she didn't care. To her, I was no longer the man with confidence and power. I was just a failure. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. I could still hear her laughter echoing in my head. It wasn't just the sound, it was the meaning behind it. It said, "You're nothing without your job." The next morning she got dressed for work, humming as if nothing had happened. I sat at the table, scrolling through job posts, pretending I didn't notice the pity, or maybe disgust, in her eyes. Days passed. Rejections piled up. My pride shrank. But deep down I knew this wasn't the end. Because life has a strange sense of humor. And 1 month later it proved that no one, not even Alina, should laugh too soon. When I got that call, I almost didn't believe it. After weeks of sending resumes into what felt like a black hole, someone finally wanted me. The HR lady's voice on the phone sounded calm, professional, but to me she was an angel. The offer was better than I had before. A higher position. More authority. And the best part? It was at a sister branch of the same company where Alina worked. I didn't tell her right away. I wanted to keep it to myself at least for a while. After all those days of being treated like a burden, I needed a moment to breathe, to feel like I'd earned something on my own again. When I finally walked into my new office, I took a deep breath. The air felt different, heavy with possibility. My name was already printed on the glass door. Operations Head, Martin Hale. I ran my hand over it, smiling. A month ago, I couldn't even look in the mirror without feeling small. The team was polite, welcoming. Nobody knew the chaos I'd crawled out of. They saw a confident man ready to lead. And for the first time in a long while, I started believing it too. Days passed smoothly. I stayed late, worked hard, earned respect. I'd stopped thinking about Alina, at least until one Thursday morning. A courier dropped a thick brown envelope on my desk, labeled Confidential, HR Promotions. I was reviewing the paperwork when my eyes froze on a familiar name. Alina Hale, promoted to Senior Accounts Manager. For a moment I just stared. The letter had been sent to me for signing, because, as operations head, I had final approval authority for all department promotions. My heart pounded. The same woman who laughed when I was fired now had her career progress resting under my pen. Life, it seemed, had a wicked sense of balance. When I saw her name on that letter, my hand froze. For a few seconds I just stared at it, Alina Hale typed neatly under the heading Recommended for Promotion. My brain couldn't decide whether to laugh, cry, or tear the paper in half. I leaned back in my chair and took a slow breath. The irony was almost too perfect. The same woman who had looked at me like I was worthless now had her future in my hands, literally sitting on my desk waiting for my signature. I could have rejected it right there. With one stroke of my pen, I could have delayed her raise, maybe even made her life as miserable as she made mine. But I didn't. I wanted to think. I wanted to feel what she felt that night, the taste of power, the quiet burn of control. I called HR, keeping my voice calm. "Yes, I've reviewed the recommendation. I'll sign it after a meeting," I said, my tone steady. They had no idea that the woman in question was my wife. That day I avoided going home early. I stayed late, pretending to finish reports, but really I just sat there staring at that letter. It reminded me how fragile pride can be, how easily life flips the script. When I finally got home, Alina was already asleep. I looked at her, peaceful, unaware. A part of me wanted to wake her up, to tell her everything, just to see the look on her face. But another part of me, the calmer, colder part, whispered, "Not yet." Revenge, I realized, doesn't need anger. It just needs timing. So I signed the letter the next morning. Proved. Because I wanted her to rise, just high enough to see the fall coming. When I walked into that conference room for the first time as operations head, I didn't expect her to be there. I was reviewing reports with a few department leads when the door opened, and there she was, walking in confidently, holding her notebook, talking to someone about an upcoming audit. For a second, time froze. Alina didn't even look up at first. But when she did, I saw the color drain from her face. Her smile faded. The pen in her hand stopped moving. Our eyes met, her shock my silence. I could almost see her trying to process what she was seeing. The man she once mocked, standing there at the head of the table, wearing a badge that said Martin Hale, Operations Head. "Good morning," I said casually as if nothing had happened. Her lips parted, but no words came out. I turned back to the others and continued the meeting like she was any other employee. My heart, though, was pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. After the meeting, she followed me to my office. She stood at the door, still speechless. You work here?" she finally whispered. I looked up from my screen, pretending to check an email. "Not just work," I said, keeping my tone calm. "I run operations now. I suppose that makes us colleagues." "Mrs. Hale." Her expression, shock, guilt, disbelief, it was all there. For a moment I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. She tried to smile, tried to explain, to soften the tension. But I didn't let her. "I've got a meeting," I said quietly. "Close the door on your way out." And she did. Slowly, without a word. That was the moment I realized she wasn't laughing anymore. After that day things changed, not just at home but everywhere. At work, Alina walked carefully now. Her laughter, once loud and careless, had turned quiet and measured. I could sense her unease every time she passed my office door. She tried to act professional, but the tension between us hung heavy in the air, invisible, yet impossible to ignore. She avoided eye contact during meetings. Her voice trembled when she spoke, and I knew she was afraid of saying the wrong thing. I didn't have to do anything. The silence itself was doing the work. At home, she pretended everything was normal. She'd ask, "How was your day?" in that forced, cheerful tone. I'd answer with a short nod, sometimes a polite smile. That was it. We were two actors performing a play neither of us believed in anymore. Sometimes I caught her watching me when she thought I wasn't looking, studying my expressions, searching for signs of anger or revenge. But I had none left to show. What she didn't understand was that my silence wasn't forgiveness, it was control. She tried small gestures, making dinner, complimenting my tie, even bringing coffee to my desk one morning at work. I accepted it all without emotion. Inside, I was watching her drown in the realization of what she had lost. Not money, not status, but respect. One evening, after another long day, she finally said it. "I'm sorry," she whispered, standing in the doorway of our bedroom. "I didn't mean to hurt you that night." I looked up from my laptop. "Yes, you did," I said quietly. "You just didn't expect life to remember it." Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't move toward her. I couldn't. Not yet. Because the wound she'd left wasn't ready to heal, and the story wasn't done. A week later, the perfect storm hit. It started with a small accounting error, one that might have gone unnoticed if it wasn't tied to a major client. Reports weren't matching, invoices were missing signatures, and the finance department was under pressure. As operations head, the issue came directly to me. And when I looked into the report trail, my chest tightened. The mistake traced back to her department, and, eventually, to her name. I sat there staring at the screen, the cursor blinking beside her signature. Fate, it seemed, wasn't done playing. By noon, my inbox was full of messages from senior management asking for explanations. I scheduled an internal review meeting. The participants, me, the audit team, and Alina. I knew she'd be terrified, and she was. The moment she walked into that room, she looked pale, clutching her folder like a shield. "Sit down," I said quietly. She did, eyes glued to the table. The audit head explained the discrepancy, then turned to me. "We need your decision, Martin." I looked at Alina, who was visibly shaking. I remembered that laugh the night she tore my dignity apart. For a moment, the urge to humiliate her right there, to give her a taste of that same helplessness, burned inside me. But then, I took a deep breath. "Check the vendor trail again," I said calmly. "It could be a system glitch. I'll review her report myself." The room fell silent. Alina looked up, confused. Everyone else nodded, relieved to escape the tension. The meeting ended. As we walked out, she followed me. "Why did you defend me?" she whispered, tears in her eyes. I stopped and looked at her. "Because I know what it feels like when no one does," I said. Then walked away. For the first time in months, she didn't look at me with arrogance or fear. She looked at me with something else, respect. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. Life was setting the stage for something much bigger. After that meeting, the air between us shifted. It wasn't warm, not yet, but it wasn't hostile either. At work, Alina started showing up early, staying late, double-checking every number before sending a file. I noticed her effort, though I never mentioned it. She was trying to rebuild what she had broken piece by piece. Colleagues began to whisper that she had changed. The once confident, sharp-tongued woman was now quieter, more grounded. I knew why. Guilt has a way of humbling even the proudest hearts. At home, she cooked dinner again, waited for me to sit with her, even left a note in my lunch one morning. "Thank you for defending me." I read it in the cafeteria, folded it neatly and kept it in my wallet, not because I forgave her but because it reminded me how fragile people can be when the tables turn. Still, the silence between us lingered. Every time I saw her smile politely, I wondered if it was real or just another mask. I couldn't tell anymore. One Friday night she came to me on the balcony. The city lights reflected in her tired eyes. "You could have ruined me," she said softly. "You had every reason to. Why didn't you?" I looked out at the skyline, feeling the cold wind brush my face. "Because I didn't need to," I said. "You already knew what it felt like, the moment you saw me sitting in that chair." She nodded slowly, tears forming but not falling. For the first time she didn't argue, didn't defend herself. She just listened. Something in me loosened that night, not love, not trust, but the anger that had been sitting heavy in my chest. I realized I didn't want revenge anymore. What I wanted was peace. But peace, I would soon learn, doesn't always come quietly. The following week, a storm hit the company, this time a real one. A major client pulled out without warning, claiming errors in communication and missed deadlines. It was chaos. Senior management demanded explanations, and since both operations and accounts were involved, that meant both me and Alina. We were called into an emergency board meeting. As I looked across the table, I could see how tense she was. Her hands clasped tightly, shoulders stiff, eyes darting between the directors. I could almost feel her fear through the silence. The head of finance started asking harsh questions, tossing files onto the table. "These reports don't line up." "Who approved this transaction?" he snapped. Alina's voice shook slightly. "I did, sir. But the delay came from operations." I interrupted gently. "Actually, that was my call," I said, my tone calm but firm. She had flagged it, but I prioritized another client. The room fell quiet. Everyone turned toward me. I knew what I was doing, taking the hit to shield her again. Not because she deserved it, but because I wanted to end the cycle of blame. After the meeting, she followed me out again, her eyes wet. "You covered for me twice now," she whispered. "I don't understand why." I turned to her. "Because that's what love used to mean for me," I said. "Not keeping score. Just protecting someone, even when they stopped protecting you." Her tears finally fell. She stood there in the hallway, speechless, ashamed. I walked away, not to hurt her, but because if I stayed, I might have forgiven her too easily. That night at home, she sat beside me quietly. No words. Just silence. The kind that holds 1,000 emotions. And for the first time I realized something deeper. Maybe this wasn't about revenge anymore. Maybe it was about who we became after it. But fate wasn't finished testing us yet. The next morning an email arrived in my inbox, one that would change everything again. The email came early, 7:12 a.m. I was half awake, sipping coffee, scrolling through my inbox when I saw the subject line. Internal transfer notice, effective immediately. At first I thought it was routine HR stuff, but the name in the body made my chest tighten. Alina Hale, transferred to New York branch, reporting manager. Martin Hale. I blinked twice, certain it had to be a mistake. But no, the company was restructuring after the client fallout, and they were merging departments. Which meant, she was now directly under my supervision. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the screen. Fate wasn't done twisting the knife, it had just sharpened it. When she walked into my office later that morning, she already knew. She stood quietly, avoiding my eyes. "I got the notice," she said softly. "I'll understand if you'd prefer someone else." I closed my laptop slowly. "This isn't personal," I replied. "We both have a job to do." But we both knew it was never that simple. The first week was tense. She followed every instruction to the letter, never late, never careless. Sometimes I'd catch her sneaking glances at me as if trying to read what I felt. The truth was, I didn't know myself. Part of me wanted to forgive her, another part wanted her to feel the silence she once left me in. One night we both stayed late finalizing a report. The office was quiet, just the hum of computers and the ticking of the clock. She finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I wish I hadn't laughed that day," she said. "You didn't deserve that." I didn't respond. I just looked at her, really looked, And for the first time I didn't see arrogance or pride. I saw regret. That night as I drove home alone, one thought kept echoing in my head. Sometimes revenge doesn't destroy people, it humbles them. And maybe, just maybe, it humbles you too. The next few days blurred together, long hours, endless calls, quiet lunches eaten side by side without a word. It was strange how silence could say so much. Between us there was no more anger, no more sarcasm. Only the weight of what used to be. One afternoon my director called me into his office. "Martin, the New York expansion is critical," he said. "We need someone steady to lead it. Someone who understands both operations and finance." I nodded, expecting a list of candidates. But then he smiled. "You and Alina work well together now. We're considering promoting both of you to run the branch as a joint team." For a moment I couldn't breathe. The same woman who once laughed at my downfall, now fate wanted me to rise with her. That evening I sat in my car in the parking lot long after everyone had left. My reflection in the windshield looked like a stranger, someone caught between pride and peace. When I finally got home, Alina was already there, sitting quietly with a cup of tea. She looked up. "They told me," she said softly, "about the promotion." I nodded. "Yeah. Quite a twist, isn't it?" She smiled faintly, the kind that carried more sadness than joy. "I don't deserve it. Not after everything I said to you." I looked at her for a long moment before answering. "Maybe not. But you've worked for it. People change, Alina. Even the ones who break us." Her eyes glistened. She whispered, "Do you think we could ever start over?" I didn't answer right away. I just looked at the woman who once tore me apart and thought about how life has a way of softening even the sharpest wounds. "Maybe," I finally said. "But not by pretending the past didn't happen, only by learning from it." She nodded, quietly wiping a tear. For the first time in months we sat together, not as enemies, not even as lovers, but as two people finally learning humility the hard way. The next morning HR made it official. An email confirmed what neither of us had fully prepared for. Effective immediately, Martin Hale and Alina Hale will co-lead the New York branch. I stared at the message for a long time, feeling both proud and unsettled. I'd earned this. We both had. But what unsettled me wasn't the job, it was the idea of starting fresh with someone who had once celebrated my fall. We flew out 2 weeks later. The new branch was bright, modern, buzzing with energy. Everyone greeted us as Mr. and Mrs. Hale, the power duo. They didn't know our history, the scars we carried under polite smiles. The first few months were steady but strange. We shared an office wall, exchanged emails more than words, and kept everything strictly professional. Yet every now and then I'd catch a glimpse of her looking at me, not the way she used to, with pride or control, but with quiet respect. Gratitude even. One evening, after everyone left, I was reviewing project timelines when she knocked gently on my door. "Can we talk?" she asked. Her tone was calm, but her eyes said everything. She sat down across from me, folded her hands, and took a deep breath. "I spent years thinking strength meant never needing anyone," she said. "When you lost your job, I laughed because I was scared. I thought if you fell, I'd be left carrying everything. But when I saw you rise again, and still choose not to destroy me, I realized what real strength looks like." For once I didn't interrupt. I just listened. "I'm sorry, Martin," she whispered. Not for laughing, not even for what I said, but for forgetting that love is supposed to mean loyalty even in loss. I looked at her for a long time before speaking. "Maybe we both forgot," I said quietly. "Maybe we were too busy proving ourselves instead of protecting each other." For the first time in years she smiled, not out of pride, not out of habit, but because she finally understood. Working together began to change us, slowly, almost invisibly at first. There were no grand apologies, no dramatic promises, just small moments that felt real. She'd bring me coffee during meetings. I'd help her fix presentations before reviews. We stopped walking on eggshells and started speaking like people again. One afternoon we were reviewing a contract when our hands brushed over the same paper. She paused, then smiled faintly. It wasn't awkward this time, just quiet acknowledgement of how far we'd come. The branch began to flourish under our leadership. Clients loved our coordination, and employees said they'd never seen a management pair so balanced. No one knew that balance came from years of imbalance, pain, and lessons learned the hard way. Late one evening, after the team had left, I stood by the window looking out at the Manhattan skyline. The lights reflected off the glass, a blur of gold and silver. Alina walked in holding 2 cups of coffee. She handed me one without a word. "You remember," she said after a pause, "the day I laughed at you?" I turned to her slowly. "I do." Her eyes softened. It was the worst thing I ever did. And the day I saw that letter on your desk, my promotion letter, was the worst day of my life. Not because of the job, but because it showed me who I had become. I took a slow sip of coffee, letting the warmth settle the chill inside me. You've come a long way since then, I said. Maybe we both have. She looked at me for a moment, then whispered, do you ever think we were meant to go through all that? I smiled faintly. Maybe we were meant to break so we'd finally learn how to rebuild. That night, we didn't talk about the past again. We just stood there, side by side, watching the city lights, silent witnesses to a love story that had burned, collapsed, and somehow found its way back to life. The following month tested everything we had rebuilt. Our branch had been performing well. Numbers up, clients happy, until one morning a confidential report went missing. It contained budget forecasts, executive approvals, and sensitive salary data. Someone had leaked part of it to the media, and corporate headquarters was furious. An internal investigation began, and since both operations and finance had access, that meant the two of us were under scrutiny again. When HR informed me, my first thought was not again. My second thought was please not her. That evening, Alina came into my office, pale and shaking. They think I leaked it, she said, voice trembling. Someone forwarded the files from my login. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. We'll fix this. Just tell me the truth, did you? She looked straight at me. No, Martin. I swear. And for the first time in years, I believed her without hesitation. The next few days were brutal. Interviews, audits, sleepless nights. I pored over server logs and email trails until my eyes burned. Finally, I found it. A background system sync error that had duplicated access permissions during our transition to New York. The leak came from a third-party vendor, not her. When I presented the evidence, the HR team went silent. The report cleared her name instantly. That evening, when I told her it was over, she broke down completely. After everything I did to you, you still protected me. I shook my head gently. I didn't protect you, Alina. I just did what was right. She cried quietly, the way people cry when the weight of guilt finally leaves their chest. And for the first time I felt peace, not victory, not pride, just peace. That night, I realized something I hadn't before. Revenge gives satisfaction, but forgiveness gives freedom. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Weeks passed and the chaos finally settled. The investigation was closed, the branch stabilized, and life began to feel calm again. For the first time in years, there were no walls between us. No anger, no resentment, just quiet understanding. Every morning we'd arrive at the office together, grab coffee, exchange small smiles that didn't need words. People said we worked perfectly as a team. They didn't know what it had taken to reach that point. Two broken people learning to build something stronger out of the pieces. One evening, after a long board meeting, Alina and I took a walk through Central Park. The city lights shimmered on the lake, and the air carried that soft chill of early autumn. She looked peaceful, lighter somehow. I used to think success meant never falling, she said. But maybe it means learning to stand up again, especially after you've hurt the person who helped you rise. I smiled faintly. I used to think revenge would make me feel whole. It didn't. Watching you change did. She stopped walking then, turned toward me and said softly, you changed too, Martin. The man who came home that night, angry, broken, he's gone. This version of you, he's someone I'd fall in love with again. Her words hit deeper than I expected. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The city moved around us, cars, laughter, footsteps, but it all felt distant. I'm not sure where this leads, I said finally, but I'm not angry anymore. That's a start. She nodded, her voice barely a whisper. That's all I need, a start. We walked back in silence, side by side, the kind of silence that feels safe. No promises, no rehearsed lines, just two people quietly forgiving life for the way it unfolded. And somehow that felt like the real ending to everything, not a grand twist, not revenge, not regret, but peace. It's strange how life circles back, how the very things that once broke you become the foundation of your peace. Sometimes, when I sit in my office late at night, I think about that version of me who came home with a pink slip and a heart full of shame. I can still see Alina's laughter echoing through that old living room, can still feel the sting of losing everything I thought defined me. Back then, I wanted nothing but to prove her wrong, to make her regret every word, every smirk, every ounce of pride she threw in my face. But standing here now years later, I realize I didn't need revenge. I needed growth. Fate didn't bring me back into her life to humiliate her. It brought me back to show both of us what humility looks like, what forgiveness feels like. She learned that love without respect is empty. And I learned that strength isn't in holding grudges, it's in letting them go before they turn you bitter. Today, Alina and I don't talk about the past much. We don't need to. It lives in the quiet gestures, the coffee she brings to my desk every morning, the thank you note still tucked inside my wallet, the peace in her eyes when our gazes meet. Sometimes life doesn't give you perfect endings. It gives you closure, gentle, human, and enough. If you ask me now whether I ever forgave her completely, I'd say yes, but not because she deserved it. Because I did. Forgiveness wasn't a gift to her, it was freedom for me. And that, I've learned, is the sweetest kind of revenge there is.